On a rainy Saturday morning in January, we visited the Stephen F. Udvar-Hazy Center, located about 40 minutes west of Washington, D.C., in Chantilly, Virginia. Part of the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum, this facility houses hundreds of commercial and military aircraft, aviation relics from around the world, an enormous collection of spaceflight vehicles and other artifacts, as well as the retired Space Shuttle Discovery. Along with these exhibits, the center also contains two state-of-the-art restoration and conservation laboratories built to restore, preserve, and maintain aviation and spaceflight artifacts for years to come. One of the newest pieces to arrive at the Conservation Lab, to be examined and renovated over the next year, is the original 11-foot USS Enterprise filming model, built for the classic Star Trek series in 1965.
My name is Margaret Weitekamp. I'm a curator here at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. I am the curator for the 11-foot studio model of the Star Trek Starship Enterprise that you see behind me. This project has been in the works probably for at least 3 or 4 years. I came into this job 10 years ago, and when I arrived and took responsibility for this model, it was on display in a custom case in the basement of the gift shop at the National Mall building. And my decision on that had always been that I would have liked it to have been in a more standard exhibit space as an artifact. But also that I wasn't going to move it until I could guarantee that it would get at least that good a space, something that was a case, especially for the model, something where we would really be able to put it on display on a permanent basis, not where it would go on display for a year and then have to be moved again. We're looking to do a conservation project rather than a restoration project on the Enterprise model because we really want to treat it like an historic object. That means being aware of its history and the layers of history that have accrued to it, but it also means being somewhat conservative in the decisions that we make. We want to make sure that we stabilize it, we want to make sure that we preserve it, that we put it in the best condition we can for display, but we also want to be thoughtful and research all of our decisions. Here at the Smithsonian, we have a lot of knowledge about this model. In fact, the artifact record for this piece alone is over 1,000 pages, and that's after it's been weeded out a bit. So we put together a special advisory committee drawing on folks from the movie industry, from model making, who really know this model and other Star Trek and movie models very, very well, and who can then give us some advice that would allow us to make the aesthetic and the practical decisions that we need to make for the conservation of this model.
Yeah, as far as hands-on work, I will be basically in charge of defining what's going to be done to it. We have a number of specialists in the restoration shop that will be working on it. And also identifying what kind of solvents we may be able to use to remove the later restoration and to get down to the original colors.
We've been doing a lot of research into the paint that's on the model because it had been touched a bunch in the previous 3 restorations in 74, 84, and 1991. And so we really want to be thoughtful about making any decisions to try to bring it back to what it would have looked like when it was being shot, probably around the end of the 2nd season. So we want to really think about what we're going to do in terms of the weathering, what we're going to do in terms of the grid lines. There's good documentation that there are markings on the model, and on your little cathode ray tube in 1968, it showed up differently than when you would see in person. So we also want to be conscious of what the difference is between the appearance of the Enterprise as a setting or even as a character in the show and the physical appearance of the model.
Thankfully, they did not restore the top part of the dish, and that is really, that's our saving grace. That is the reference point that we're going for. But by looking at the records from the previous restorations, it really does look like there's going to be very little original paint left on the rest of the model, unfortunately.
Malcolm Collum, who's our chief conservator here, has been working to do UV analysis of the paint, and also we were able to bring in 2 X-ray technicians from the National Zoological Park, one of our sister institutions here at the Smithsonian, to get a good look at the inside of the model. And the combination of those bits of analysis really gives us a lot of information about the model without having to do anything invasive.
Yeah, the X-rays have actually been very revealing. It's amazing how much structure is inside of here. There's tons of wiring, these compact fluorescent light fixtures, transformers, wiring terminals. It's incredible. One of the things that was done previously in the restoration was to mill out the arms to hide the wiring harness. That's definitely something we would not do in today's standards.
Part of what made us start thinking about the need to do some conservation work on the Star Trek Enterprise model was that these nacelles, which are the fictional propulsion units for this model and this starship, had started to sag and had started to spread a little bit. And that is part of the inherent design of the Enterprise, which is designed to look like it can't exist well in 1G, and it turns out that after 50 years, it kind of can't. So we're really looking at the junctions between that hold these pieces up and that bring them into the body of the main model as a place where we want to make sure that we have a nice tight joint and we have something that's really going to be stable enough to keep these in place. But I want to make sure, first and foremost, that this artifact in the National Collection at the Smithsonian really survives for generations.
Well, if we can find a system that would allow the model to be illuminated safely, like with the use of LED lights, how we're going to replicate the original spinning effect that you have in the front of the nacelles is going to be a challenge. But if we can do that safely, I'm all in favor of doing it. I think it would really make the model come to life and be much more engaging for the public.
I really think the Star Trek Enterprise studio model is an excellent fit for the Boeing Milestones of Flight Hall because we at the museum talk a lot about how much spaceflight has served as an inspiration for people's imagination about what could be next. And I really think that Star Trek and the Enterprise model in particular, if you have to have one object that tells that imagination and inspiration story, this is the piece, and I'm delighted to be able to put it into the Milestones Hall.